We're going to be learning now the Halakha Psuka, the Musar, also for Parashat Ekev for Thursday. Rabim shenitvaadu le'echol pat or lishtot yain. If a group of people gather together to formally sit together and eat bread or drink wine, uberech ehad mehem ve'anu kulam amen, and one of them recited the blessing while all the others answered amen. Hare elu mutarim le'echol ve'lishtot. They will be permitted to eat or to drink without each of them saying a bracha for themselves. In other words, just one person saying the bracha for the bread or for the wine, while all gathered together to sit in a group together, one says the bracha and he exempts all others from saying the bracha just by the fact that they answered amen. אבל אם לא נתכוונו לאכול כאחד, אלא זה בא מעצמו וזה בא מעצמו, אף על פי שאין אוכלים מכיכר אחד, כל אחד ואחד מברך לעצמו. However, if they did not intend to eat together, but each one of them came of his own, happens to sit there, even if they're eating all from the same loaf of bread, each one says a blessing for himself. אבל שאר אוכלים, however, other types of food that is not bread or wine, ומשקין אינן צריכים מסיבה, or types of drinks that is not wine. You don't need to formally get together, to sit together like they used to recline and form a group to eat together. Those other types of food which is not bread or types of drinks which are not wine, even if they just happen to be together, so in this case, even if one recited the blessing and all others answered amen, even if they did not intend to sit together, they can be fulfilling the obligation of saying a bracha just by saying amen to the other person. In other words, one person is eating an apple, he says Borei Peri Hayetz, another person hears him, and they have in mind to fulfill the obligation of the bracha, even if they're not going to sit together to have a meal together or to eat together. By answering amen, he has fulfilled the obligation of saying the bracha, and he can eat that fruit without having to say the bracha himself. כל השומע אחד מישראל מברך ברכה מכל הברכות כולן, אף על פי שלא שמע ברכה כולה מתחילתה ועד סופה, ואף על פי שאינו חייב באותה ברכה חייב לענות אמן. Anyone who hears a fellow Jew saying a beracha, even if he did not hear the whole beracha being said, but he heard half of it, let's say the end of the beracha, and even if he's not obligated himself to say that beracha, he just heard the beracha, he should answer amen. And the answering of amen, by the way, has even more importance than the person saying the bracha. Unfortunately, many times we're not careful with that aspect and we forget to say amen. You hear a bracha from a fellow Jew, answer amen. However, if the person who said the bracha was a goy, or apikoros, or if he was an atheist, he was Jewish person, but he was not a person that he was a believer, he was a heretic, a person who's a apikoros, such a person, or kuti, or a certain type of goy called kuti, or tinok, or if he was a child, a mitlamed, who's just practicing to say the bracha, he's not saying the bracha over fruit, you say Baruch Ata, he's practicing. Or Shaya Gadol Veshina Mimatbea Beracha. Or if he was an older person, but he deviated from the established wording that is for the bracha. He made up his own creative wording for the bracha. In all these cases, and oni maharen, amen, you don't answer amen in such cases. The end of the Musar here speaks about a certain aspect also to be careful with. It says here, Tismach betula b'machol levadam, aval, it says here, al te'arev banim im banot ben yahatiu. Don't mix boys and girls together in events such as parties, dancing, that type of thing. Tismach betula b'machol levadam, aval bahurim uskanim yahdav. וכן ילדים וילדות משחקים ברחובותיהם, ילדים לבד וילדות לבד. Just like we do in our events, in our weddings, in our parties that are official parties of the synagogue, that we make sure that there is a separation between boys dancing and girls dancing, because in such situations, unfortunately, the Yetzirah is present, and it can bring, one thing can lead to another, which would be inappropriate type of situations. And therefore, the Musar says here, it's important to have a group of the girls dancing or celebrating separately, and Na'arim Uzkenim, and the young men and the elders together. And he brings a pasuk to prove that. V'chen besof Tehillim, in the end of Tehillim it says, Bachurim vegam betulot. This is chapter 148 of Tehillim. He says, Bachurim, young men, vegam betulot, and also betulot, young ladies. Velo amar bachurim im betulot. He didn't say young men with young women. Kemo zekenim im ne'arim, like the other pasuk that says zekenim im ne'arim, elders, in other words, older men with young men. These they dance together. But bachurim vegam betulot, lerabot nashim levad. The word gam comes to indicate that there should be a mechitza, there should be a separation, and this is the advisable way to do it. If a person wants to do things the right way, if he comes to consult, if he wants to know what would be the best way to do things, the best way to do things, like we have in many of our events, when it comes to dancing, there is a separation of both men and women, because unfortunately, especially with the younger crowd, when you have this kind of a atmosphere of a mixture of both young boys and young girls dancing, and if a person wants to maintain a certain level of kedusha, a certain level of sanctity, a certain level of respect, a certain level of doing things according to halacha, the Musar says, then the two groups should be separated, and like we do in our official events of the synagogue or in our religious events, weddings where there is a mechitza, it is coming not just from somebody deciding on his own arbitrarily. That's the way to do things. It is actually brought in halacha, and it's brought today also in Chok L'Israel in Musar. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.